What's cracking, my star players, and welcome to the final video of this week, which I have titled, So Who Wins? This is technically my final tweet for 2022 and will detail the reasoning I have gone with my choice. If you enjoyed this video and want to support this channel, be sure to leave a like and make a comment down below, and go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell to stay up to date. So we basically have two teams that have probably rivaled each other this entire year. So we have the Penrith Panthers, who are led by Nathan Cleary, Jerome Luai, Brian To'o, Stephen Crichton, I'm just reading random names, Apisai Coruscant, Vilimau Kikau, Isaiah Yeo. Basically, there's a lot of names you probably know, and they're going to be going against the Parramatta Eels, who are led by Clint Gutherson, with notable players like Mitchell Moses, Dylan Brown, Kyle Blake, Will Penasini, Reagan Campbell-Gillard, Junior Paulo, and Isaiah Papali. So in this video, I'm going to go through each team. I'm going to say their pros and cons. I'm going to also note their notable wins, their notable losses, and I'm also going to basically analyze each team. Then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to which team I'm actually going to tip, and then I'm going to tell you why I've gone with the choices that I have. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to start off with the underdogs, and that is the Parramatta Eels. Now, just because Parramatta are not the favourites to win the premiership, that doesn't mean it's impossible. With the likes of Mitchell Moses, Clint Gutherson, Junior Paulo, Reagan Campbell-Gillard in their mix, they are sure to do some damage. Let's have a look at the chance that the Eels have to win this game. Now, I want to say their notable wins are against a few teams. So we have round 3, we had against the Storm, which they were the away team. They lost by 4 points, 24-8. Were they away? Okay, I think maybe I've done this wrong then. Okay, round 24, we have the Broncos. They won against them, and they were at Suncorp Stadium. They won 53-6. Then they also beat the Storm again at home, 22-14. And then in their final week, in their finals, they beat the Raiders 40-4, so they dominated. And in their final week, so last week, they also beat the Cowboys 20-24. Now, that Cowboys game we're actually going to talk about, because I think that is going to influence my choice here. But also, they're notable losses, but I'm going to tell you now, this is not going to influence me a lot. They lost against the Tigers in round 6, but they only lost by a point. They lost to Cowboys in round 8, 35-4. Round 14, they lost to Bulldogs, 34-4. They lost to Rabbitohs, 30-12, and then in round 22, they lost to Rabbitohs again, and they were at home, 0-26. So you'll probably notice with the Parramatta Eels is that since round 22, they've only lost one game, and that was against the Penrith Panthers, but I think they got dominated. I think they won like 20-6. They lost 20-6. I'm going to bring this up here before I make a mistake. Also, I have an ad. There we go. 27-8. So Panthers did dominate in that game. So I don't know if it'll be a repeat, but yeah, we'll get into that. So team lists. So notable name, we have Nathan Brown that has been named for the team. But also, I also want to mention that the following players are going to be leaving the Parramatta Eels this year. We have, and by the way, before you ask if I butcher a name, I'm really sorry. Marata Nirakori, Isaiah Papali, Oregon Kafusi, Reem Manui, Ray Stone, Tom Apakik, and Hazy Parame. So those notable players are going to be leaving the team this year, so they're probably looking for a last hurrah as such. Pros. So for Parramatta, I only have 4 pro points that I want to mention. So since their loss to the Rabbitohs in round 22, they have won all but one game, and the one game they lost was against Penrith. So the only game that they have lost is against the team they're about to go against. So this will be very interesting. If the Eels are given a chance, they will capitalize on any weaknesses of the opponents. So if Penrith are able to show weakness and the Eels are able to capitalize on that, they will probably dominate the half. They have already beaten the Panthers twice before, once which was a very close game. I think they won by 2. And The other one was a very comfortable win. I believe it was 35-10 off the top of my head. I'm not entirely sure. I'm actually going to look it up right now. 34-10. Yep, I was absolutely right. But which actually, that second game that I mentioned, that is the game that Nathan Cleary was sent off for his spear tackle. So they can clearly beat the Penrith Panthers without Nathan Cleary, with Nathan Cleary. So, and I feel like Nathan Cleary kind of just makes the team. So honestly, if something happens to Nathan Cleary within this game, I do think the Parramatters are going to have a good chance of winning. Neither team are playing at their home ground, though Parramatta is much closer to a core stadium than Penrith, so there may be more Para fans there at the grand final. Now we're going to have to look at the cons, and unfortunately for Parramatta, I do have a few. So they can be inconsistent, but this has been less present in the last few rounds. But I should point out that Parramatta do have this thing where they do become bad at the end of a season. Now, they've actually proved that this time they're not going to do it again when they get to the grand final. I do think they will show up for the grand final, and I do think they have a very good chance of winning. But at the same time, if that inconsistency starts to show again, and in this grand final, then they're going to lose. And my actual second point is, when they won against the Cowboys last week, their effort was not there as much as they have been the last few weeks. And if they show up with that effort in this grand final, I believe they will be destroyed in the grand final. I do believe that Parramatta will be destroyed in the grand final if they show up like they did with the Cowboys. However, in saying that, like, even if they do and they still win, then obviously Penrith are just, it's their, like, again, like a lot of people are saying, it's their grand final to lose. So yeah. And the final point is that there is a very big lack of experience in the team in terms of going into a grand final. I believe the Parramatta Eels actually have only one player going into the grand final. I don't know who that is, but I do know there's one player. I can't even think, but against a team that has been in the grand final 3 times in a row, this is definitely going to be a challenge for them. All right, now that we've looked at Parramatta, let's look at Penrith. Now, Penrith are the favorites. Now, I think a lot of people have predicted that Penrith would get to the grand final for a 3rd time in a row, and a lot of people are predicting for them to go back to back. And I have no shame in saying that I believe this as well. Let's have a look at Panthers. Now, I didn't slip, don't worry. It's just more of a, I do believe you'll get there eventually. So, let's look at Penrith. So, notable wins from Penrith. Now, obviously, if I show notable wins, I'm just going to have every single game here. So I have 2 notable wins that I wanted to talk about. Now, they did beat Parramatta for the first time a few weeks ago. So that's something that they needed to know. And the other game here that I have is no other game, because like every single game they've won a game. So the other things that I wanted to say was notable losses. They did lose to Parramatta both times in the main season. They did lose to Storm as well, and I think they got I think Raiders beat them. No, Raiders did not beat them. I'm sorry, that's a mistake. Now, I believe it's Storm that was the other team that beat them. So, this will be, yeah, it was Storm. That's right. Yeah. So Parramatta beat them. Raiders did not beat them. Storm beat them. They beat Rabbitohs as well. Penrith beat Rabbitohs, and then they beat Warriors, and then they lost to Cowboys as well. But the thing is that they had 13 players rested at the time. So honestly, that was kind of expected for Panthers to lose that game. And obviously, Cowboys just dominated that game with 38-8. So there you go. So with the team list for Penrith Panthers, one notable out that I am going to mention, Taylor May is out. His hamstring has unfortunately done the better of him, so he will be missing this grand final. And in saying that as well, the following players are going to be leaving this year. Apisai Koroisau, who's going to the Tigers. Isaiah Katoa. I think it's Isaiah Katoa, I'm not entirely sure. Robert Jennings, Jermaine Hopgood, Sean O'Sullivan, sorry, my mistake. And probably, I think, one of the most notable losses that they're going to have this year, Villamau Kikau, who's actually going to the Bulldogs next year. So, yeah, I think they're going to be looking for a really big final piece together. So this will be very, very dominant, you know. All right, now for the pros for Penrith Panthers. Now, Penrith have won a majority of their games to the point where they were 6 points ahead of second place. They lost 4 games in total. They lost twice against the Parramatta Eels. They lost against Cowboys and they lost against Storm. But when they lost against Storm, they didn't have Nathan Cleary or Jerome Luai. And when they lost against the Cowboys, the majority of their players were rested. So those losses were kind of expected. They are very touchable and know what they are doing. They do plan. Their plan is carefully thought out and is controlled very fluid by Nathan Cleary, their leader, and also their skipper. Their fullback, Dylan Edwards, has been one of the best players in the comp this year and is always putting himself on the line. I'm going to actually talk about Dylan Edwards in a bit. So, you know what? Let me talk about him now. No, he's been really good. I honestly think he's been doing a lot more than people realize. I think Dylan Edwards has just been putting himself on the line. He's been contributing a lot to the plays. Honestly, how he played last week is, I think, how Latrell Mitchell should have played last week. He was into it. He was getting the action in, and that's kind of why that team did well. And honestly, I give that credit to Dylan Edwards. There are a number of key players that will be leaving this year, so they will be seeking to end on a very high note. I also don't honestly see Penrith doing as well as they did next year, so it will be a firing up to deliver a grand finale before their players have to say goodbye. So in saying that, I do think with losing the players that I have mentioned, they are going to lose some power. In saying that, I don't think they'll, when I do my ladder prediction for 2023, you'll notice that I'll probably put Penrith lower than the top 4, but I'll still have them in the top 8. It's mainly because they're going to lose a bit of power, but they're going to start building up again, and that's just Penrith's way of doing things. And of course, I think the biggest pro that they have is a majority of their players have been in 3 straight grand finals. Now, they lost the first one and they won the second one. Now, this could end on a second loss for the Penrith Panthers in a grand final, or it could end on their first back-to-back, which will be kind of interesting. I think Penrith did go back-to-back at one point, but I'm not entirely sure. I think it was it'd be their first back-to-back in modern rugby league. All right, but so I think they're going to have the most experience in a grand final. So this will be very interesting for the Penrith Panthers. So this is either going to end up with their final. This is either going to end up being their second loss in a grand final, or it's going to be their first back-to-back. And kind of looking forward to seeing how they go. So looking forward to that. All right, but now we've kind of got to go through the final point here, and that is the cons for Penrith Panthers. And there's only 2, so I'm going to be very quick through these. So, though they have won a majority of their matches this year, they have slipped in consistency towards the end of the year, but that was mainly blaming because Nathan Cleary and Jerome Luai were gone in the last few rounds. I believe Jerome Luai returned in round 25, and I think Cleary returned in the first finals week, and honestly, his return was so major. They have lost to Parramatta both times in the regular season, only to beat them in the finals this year at their home ground at Bluebet Stadium. So they've kind of got that going for it, but at the same time, they've probably played, I don't know if they played more or less at Accor Stadium than the Parramatta, but I think Parramatta are going to have a little bit more fans there. And also, they're probably going to want a big crowd there, because if they do win, it's going to be their first. Oh, I forgot to mention, by the way, if Parramatta win, this is their first grand final they have won since 20. No, it wasn't even 20. It was 1980 something, 30 years ago, which is kind of insane for Parramatta to get this far. And honestly, I'm kind of glad they're here, but at the same time, I don't know about any. Anyway, let's get to that point. So this next section is, so who wins? So after carefully having to look at each team at their pros and cons, and also comparing to each other, I have made my final decision as to who I am going to back in the grand final. So what is my final tip, and who do I think will take all of the glory in 2022? My prediction for the winner of the grand final in 2022 is the Penrith Panthers 1-12. Okay, so first the question you might be having is why not Parramatta? Okay, so please don't take this as my choice as me saying Parramatta don't have a chance to win in the grand final. I do think they have a chance. I have a small chance. In fact, I'm going to put up a graph right now saying how much of a chance I still think they have. Now, you'll notice that Penrith side is much darker. Because black is basically Penrith and blue is basically the Parramatta Eels. But you'll notice that the majority of it is black and gray, which is you'll notice there's also two different like shades. Like I think the lighter shade, I believe from what I understand, the lighter shade is the 13 plus chance, and the 1-12 chance is the more solid color. And then on the other side, you'll see that I think I gave Parramatta a good 40% chance of winning the grand final. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not looking at the graph right now, but I did give them a very good like the chance. Like it's not like they have like no chance of winning this grand final. Like they do have the chance. And like if you go ahead and simulate so many grand finals, Eels can win. Obviously you see my simulation, like Penrith Penrith pretty much won that grand final, but like at the same time, if that final run did not happen, Parramatta would have won it. So honestly, it's not like Parramatta don't have a chance. They have a very good chance, but I'm just going to say that I don't think it's as good as a chance as Penrith. So the thing is that yes, Parramatta have beaten Penrith before and already this season, and they can very much do it again. And also the team they are going against, like in terms of the lack of grand final experience between the two teams, I don't see Parramatta winning this one. I do think it'll be a very close game, and I do think it'll end up being tight, but I don't see Parramatta pulling through this one. So I'm sorry, Parramatta fans, but I have to back Penrith in terms of who I back this final. So now you might be asking why Penrith? Now, this is a very simple yet complicated answer. Penrith have been in the grand final for the last 3 years and have proved time and time again that they can get the job done, and I won't dismiss that. They have a lot of experience in terms of playing a grand final, so they would know to keep their composure over the Parramatta Eels. I do also think Nathan Cleary is also a very tactical player, and he will be 100% stepping up and even wanting revenge after his send-off game earlier this year. Okay, so now we've got final thoughts. So now I've got a few questions that other content creators have answered, so I'm going to quickly run fire. And this is, again, I'm just going to stress, this is my opinion and my opinion only. So if there is a difference between my opinion and your opinion, why not put it in the comments down below so we know. So the winner of the grand final, I said, is going to be the Penrith Panthers. I believe the margin will be 1-12. I think the final scoreline will be 24-16. My first try scorer, I think I'll go bold and I'll say Parramatta score first, and it's Makai Sivo. I do believe Dylan Edwards will score at any point during the game, and I do believe that the man of the match and the Clive Churchill medal winner will be Dylan Edwards. Now, the reason I haven't picked Nathan Cleary is because I do believe he's not eligible to get it due to his send-off earlier this year. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Dylan Edwards. Now, it might not be Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards might have the worst game he's ever played, but I believe Dylan Edwards has a good chance of winning it this year. Now, before this video ends, I want to give a massive thank you to everyone who showed me support this year for this channel. Though I have only been running the channel for a limited amount of time, all of the support you have given me through its lifespan has been invaluable, and I have so greatly appreciative of you and subscribing and supporting my channel. I don't see much happening with this channel within the next 6 months. I do plan to consistently upload, but I don't think it'll be anything spectacular. Sure, I have some plans for the World Cup and then soon after, but I'm not an detail kind of person when it comes to rugby league. Sure, I want to get much better at doing it, but there are content creators who do a much better job. So I honestly want to take a moment to shout out some of the awesome content creators who inspired me to build this channel. So the first two is I'm kind of going to group them together because I think one of them does do a bit of similar content to mine, but the other one, like, mainly because they're also both Queenslanders. So I want to give a shout out to both Odd Ones X and Insane, both awesome content creators on this platform and also Queenslanders. And I hope next year that the Broncos do well because they are Broncos supporters. Another shout out I want to make, and it's actually a common commenter on my videos, is Rugby League History. Now, they've been supporting my channel since I first started, and they've been doing play-by-play and with how I'm doing. And honestly, that's been one of the pushes into terms of like how I want to essentially do it. And honestly, the encouragement means so much to me, man. And I'm so thankful you did that. The next person I want to shout out is JBD Selects. They are mainly a tipping channel on YouTube, and I consider their choices when it comes to tipping because when I do my tipping video, they're the only ones that actually did it. So he also supports the Warriors as well, so I hope they do well next year as well. And last but not least, and honestly, the channel that inspired me to do this the most is Mr. Luke Sports, which if you like this kind of content that I do, he was the pioneer of it, and he also is a Bulldog supporter, and that's a huge plus as well. So I want to give a massive shout out to Luke and say thank you so much for, I want to say a big thank you to him for kind of inspiring me, and thank you, bro. Honestly, I couldn't have done it without you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate every single one of you who watched this video, and I hope you enjoy the grand final. Much love, and finally, probably for the last time this year, go the West Tigers.